Ethan wiped the grease from his hands on a rag that had seen better days, leaning against the worn metal workbench in his small, dimly lit garage. The scent of oil and engine parts hung in the air, familiar and comforting in its own rugged way. Life had never handed him an easy path. Every coin he earned went toward keeping his mother's tiny apartment from falling apart and making sure she never went hungry. Yet, despite the constant grind and the exhaustion that clawed at his bones, Ethan held his head high. There was a quiet dignity in his work, in the honest sweat that coated his hands, and he carried it like armor. The sudden roar of a sleek black car pulling up outside made him glance up, brow furrowed. The kind of car that gleamed so brightly it almost hurt his eyes. A sharply dressed man stepped out, his shoes clicking against the cracked pavement, and in his hand was a crisp envelope that seemed wildly out of place in Ethan's dusty little world. Ethan straightened, unsure whether to laugh or be suspicious. Can I help you?" he asked cautiously, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and caution. "Mr. Ethan, this is for you," the man said with a faint, polite smirk, holding out the envelope. "It's an invitation. A local gala. You've been selected for a blind date tonight." Ethan blinked, the words taking a moment to sink in. His laugh was short, almost bitter, as he glanced down at the envelope. The paper was thick, luxurious, and far removed from anything he'd ever touched. "A blind date? You've got the wrong guy," he said, chuckling nervously. "No mistake," the man said, his smirk widening just a little. "The invitation is real. Dress code is formal. You'll fit right in." Ethan shook his head, unsure whether this was a practical joke or some bizarre twist of fate. He thought about the long, lonely nights in his cramped apartment, the hours he spent under engines, the way the world seemed to pass him by in golden limousines and glittering parties. For reasons he couldn't explain, he found himself deciding to go. Maybe tonight won't hurt, he told himself. Maybe it'll just be a story I'll laugh about later. The gala was a world away from anything he knew. Chandeliers sparkled like constellations in a cloudless sky, and laughter echoed against high ceilings, mingling with the scent of expensive perfume and candlelight. Ethan felt like a shadow in a room full of brilliance, clutching the edges of his ill-fitting suit as he was led to a table where a young girl sat waiting. Her blonde hair shimmered in the soft light, and her eyes, bright and curious, fixed on him immediately. "Hi," she said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm Lily." Ethan's lips twitched into a nervous smile. "Ethan. Nice to meet you." And just like that, something shifted. In the midst of all the glitter and awkward glances, Lily didn't care about his rough hands, his threadbare suit, or the faint scent of oil lingering on him. She just wanted to talk, to laugh, to share a moment. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt seen, not for what he had, but for who he was. The hours melted away as they spoke, sharing small jokes, stories, and smiles. Ethan realized that for the first time in a long while, he was not a poor mechanic in a cold city, he was simply a boy enjoying a magical evening with someone who saw him, truly and honestly, behind the glittering chandeliers and polished marble floors. A small group of young socialites huddled in a corner, their whispered laughter barely audible over the music and chatter. They had set this evening up as a prank, certain it would be entertaining to watch a poor mechanic like Ethan stumble through the world of silk gowns, champagne flutes, and delicate silverware. Their smirks were smug, their eyes gleaming with the thrill of what they imagined would be someone else's embarrassment. But as Ethan and Lily sat across from each other, something unexpected unfolded. Lily's eyes sparkled with a quiet joy, untouched by status or wealth. Ethan, despite his nervousness, laughed easily at her jokes, his voice warm and genuine. There was no pretension between them, no need to impress anyone. Just laughter, conversation, and a connection that neither of them could have anticipated. "I like him," Lily whispered softly, almost to herself, her small hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. Her words carried more weight than the socialites expected. The group froze, their whispers halting abruptly. One of them muttered under their breath, wait, she actually likes him? Yes, Lily said, a shy smile playing on her lips. He's kind, and he listens. And he makes me laugh. That's all that matters. The socialites exchanged incredulous glances. Their prank, which had begun with glee, was unraveling. The poor mechanic, whom they had imagined would fumble and blush and retreat under their scrutiny, was winning hearts, not with money or status, but with humility, patience, and a simple honesty that no amount of wealth could buy. Ethan remained oblivious to the prank. His focus was entirely on Lily, on her bright curiosity and the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. Each question she asked, each story she shared, made the world beyond the gala fade. For the first time in his life, he was not measuring himself against others or worrying about appearances. He was simply present, and the effect was electric. Lily leaned forward, her gaze fixed on him with an intensity that made his chest tighten. "Tell me more about your work," she said. "It sounds important." Ethan chuckled softly, shaking his head. "It's just fixing cars," he admitted. "Nothing glamorous. But it matters to someone, and that's enough for me." "That's what I like about you," Lily said earnestly. "You don't pretend to be something you're not." In that moment, the gala, the laughter, the whispers of the socialites, all faded into insignificance. The pranksters realized their plan had completely backfired. What they intended as humiliation had instead highlighted Ethan's strength, warmth, and authenticity. And Lily, with the innocence and wisdom only a child could possess, had recognized it immediately. Ethan smiled at her, unaware of the chaos in the corner of the room. "I'm glad you think that," he said softly. "Most people wouldn't notice something like that." "I do," Lily said, her voice small but certain. "And I'm glad I met you." In that glittering hall of wealth and pretense, a simple truth shone brighter than all the chandeliers: kindness, honesty, and a genuine heart could bridge worlds that money never could. As the gala wound down and the last notes of the piano drifted through the grand hall, Lily tugged gently on Ethan's sleeve. "Wait, will I see you again?" she asked, her eyes wide with hope, brimming with a sincerity that cut through the glittering pretense around them. Ethan looked down at her, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. The laughter, the stories, the quiet moments they had shared, it all added up to something he never thought possible. He knelt slightly to meet her gaze. "Of course," he said softly. "I'd like that very much." From across the room, Lily's father, the CEO of a multinational company, watched the scene unfold. He had spent years believing that wealth and privilege could ensure happiness for his daughter. But as he observed her bright smile and the way she leaned into Ethan's presence, he realized that joy wasn't something that could be bought. It came from being seen, being heard, and being treated with genuine care. The man before them wasn't rich, polished, or well-connected. He was honest, kind, and attentive. And somehow, that mattered more than all the money in the world. Meanwhile, the pranksters, who had orchestrated the blind date for their amusement, exchanged panicked glances. Their laughter had been intended to mock, but now it felt hollow and misplaced. The plan they thought would humiliate Ethan had instead illuminated his character, making him shine in a way no amount of etiquette or expensive attire ever could. When the truth of the prank was revealed, the room fell silent. Whispers spread like wildfire, and the young heirs stammered, caught between amusement and embarrassment. But Lily, unflinching, held Ethan's hand firmly. "I don't care why he's here," she said, her voice steady and strong despite her small frame. "I like him for who he is. That's all that matters." Ethan felt a rush of disbelief, then a deep, grounding gratitude. This night, which had begun with the weight of ridicule looming over him, had transformed into something extraordinary. In a world that often measured worth by wealth and appearances, he had been recognized for the one thing that truly defined him: his heart. As they walked out into the crisp night air, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, Ethan glanced down at Lily. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely above the soft hum of the evening. For seeing me. Lily grinned, tugging his hand. You're welcome. I knew there was something special about you the moment I met you. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel the divide between social classes pressing down on him. The garage, the engines, the life of struggle he had known, it didn't matter in this moment. What mattered was connection, laughter, and a young girl's unwavering instinct to see the goodness in someone. And as they walked side by side, the gala fading behind them, it became clear that the richest treasures weren't diamonds or gold, they were moments like these, where hearts met across boundaries and something beautiful, honest, and lasting was born.